Are you surviving instead of thriving? Jesus promises abundant life, not just existence. Join us for Pray Without Ceasing 2026 on August 15th in Buena Park, California, for a day of restoration, renewal, and reconnection with God. Stop running on empty. Experience the fullness Christ died to give you. Pray Without Ceasing 2026 because you weren't meant to just survive. Register now at praywithoutceasingministries.com. Hey friends, welcome to Leading from Wholeness. I'm Audrey Shelby, a wife, mother, leader, and child of God. I'm here to let you know that your call to leadership was not a mistake. Fear and anxiety will no longer run your show. You have been called by God to lead right where you are. We'll talk about leading with authenticity and power, overcoming barriers that keep us stuck and get in the way of us being effective leaders and truly rising to the call that God has for us. With tactical strategies like prayer, we're going to grow closer to God in these busy times. You can enjoy leading from a place of freedom and purpose. So grab your journal and your hot chocolate and let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the Leading from Wholeness podcast. I'm Audrey Shelby, your host. How y'all doing? Let me start by just saying thank you. Thank you to my good friend, Dr. Kimberly Miller. Thank you to all of the people who have listened to last week's episode. There's been so much of just outpour of gratitude and comments and feedback of people saying how much the podcast impacted them, how it just continued to press on. And it was just such an encouragement. So I just want to thank you all, one, for listening. And just thank God for using us to share, right? We talked about transitions last week. So if you didn't get to listen to last week's episode, please go listen, download. Would love to hear your feedback, leave some comments, leave a review. But it just really it was powerful. And just, I think the way that Dr. Kim just shared her heart, it really encouraged me as well. And so I just want to say thank you. I just really, really want to say thank you. I told her, I was like, we need to do a part 2 because we're talking about menopause and all this stuff and the impacts on leadership. So we're praying about that if we're going to do a second part. But I thought it was beautiful. So again, thank you all so much for just the feedback that you shared, and just so grateful that it has helped you and impacted you in your lives. So thank you for that. Today we are talking about what I think is one of the challenges of being a leader, which is knowing when to ask for help. Sometimes I think because we're leaders and we're in these roles, we have expectations of ourselves to be like superhuman, right? Like Superman or Superwoman. And because there is a gravity to the seats that we sit in, there can be this false narrative that I have to be perfect and I have to know all the answers. And really, it's not true, but there is a pressure that is there. And I want to just acknowledge that the pressure is real, right? Like, you're not on your own. It is a real pressure. I went to graduate school and I studied social work, and I was really excited about helping people, and my internship was at a public interest law firm. And once I did that for a year, I really realized, like, oh, these different systems that people are connected to is what's impacting their day-to-day life, right? It's impacting their quality of living. And so I knew I wanted to get in there and start impacting systems. Like, let's do the system change work. And so when I got my first job, I went straight into management, right? So that was absolutely a blessing. And I recognized that the particular division I was in, which was in child welfare, it didn't have a director. It sat right under the CEO. I was like, okay. And I remember saying to myself, like, I'm going to be the director of child welfare. That's what I want to do. And then saying, okay, God, that's what I want to do. I'm going to be director of child welfare. I had been in the door 2 minutes. Like, I think by the time I got this vision of what I wanted to do, I had been there for less than a year. I started out managing one program, and then there was an opportunity that came up to manage a second. And so I got the call, like, hey, can you take over this program? Of course, I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries. Then the third program came. And when the third program came, I was like, well, hold on. Wait a minute. I already got, 20 plus people. maybe let's hold off on this one, right? And sometime later after that came a bigger opportunity to take over the division. And so I had been there for 3 years when that call came. And I remember, especially in the first year as a division head, thinking like over and over, it's like, this is a lot. I just kept thinking, this is a lot. This is overwhelming. I was trying to just kind of get my footing, right? Like I knew how to manage a program. I knew how to manage the day-to-day work. But now I wasn't a program manager anymore. I wasn't a part of the day-to-day working, seeing the clients and seeing the social workers and the case managers and the therapists. I wasn't doing that anymore. Now I'm over all these programs. And so as I went from managing one program with like 12 people and 3 sites, it shifted to 65 people, 3.5 million in contracts, multiple locations. Let's just say multiple locations. And then I had a management team of 7 that were my direct reports, and then all the staffs underneath them. And I felt like I didn't have language for the weight of that. And people expected me to have answers, and they expected me to know things. Some of the little stuff was like, yeah, I can teach you how to be a program manager. I've done that, right? For 2-3 years. But once I got to that next level, I was like, ooh, this is a lot. This is a lot. And what I found myself doing was trying to do everything on my own. I was still operating as if I was a single manager over a single program, not a single manager or a division leader over 5 programs. I went from 1 to 5. And, and so I'm getting on my management team's nerves. I know I was, and I love them, but I know I was getting on their nerves because they'd be like, Audrey, okay, listen, we got it. But I would try to be in the little minute details of the day to day. And my mentor was like, you can't do that. You have to trust that they can do it. And you also have to know kind of what their strengths and their weaknesses are. And I'm like, well, how do I know that? Like, how do I, how do I figure that part out? So a couple of them had gone from being my colleagues. Like we were fellow program managers together. And then I got promoted. So now I'm supervising my friends. So that was hard. Has anybody done that before? That was a little hard. Don't recommend it. But we made it, but it was hard. That was not an easy task, but it was a transition that was necessary. And this is looking back. Now, I don't think that I asked God if that's what he wanted me to do. I told him, God, I want to do this. I see there's a vacancy here. I've assessed there's a gap. I can do this. Lord, let me be over this division. Are you hearing it out loud? I'm hearing it out loud right now to myself, and I'm kind of cringing. Oh my gosh, I thought I could do it. Did I tell you how old I was? Let me tell you how old I was. I was 25 when I got this idea. Oh, I'm going to do this, right? And so when I got promoted to that division head, I was 28. And so, I'm a fresh social worker, fresh manager. I'm excited. We're talking about less than 5 years of management experience, and I'm already leading a whole division. But what I realized was like, I didn't have everything I needed to manage this. I didn't. And so there were times where I needed to ask for help and I wasn't sure how to do it. And part of it, literally, it was intimidating. Like I told you, I was 28 years old. So I'm 28 years old, sit on now the executive team. For us, it was mostly women. It was a couple of men, but mostly women. So these men and women that I had admired for the last 2-3 years that I've been in the company, now I'm sitting at the executive table with them, and like the counterpart nearest to my age is like 50, and I'm 28, and so it was like, oh, okay, and this kind of intimidation of like, I don't want to say I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to ask for help. I'm supposed to know how to do this. And that just really wasn't true. I mean, you think about the skills that got you in the door at your organization, the skills that may have gotten you to your first 1 or 2 promotions. It's not the same level of skill set that you need at the executive level. At the executive level, you're 50,000 feet up. And now you're trying to look down and survey what's happening, making sure folks are in place, things are still moving. processes are going, finances are moving, like simple stuff. Like I had to sign up on invoices every single month to make sure our contractors got paid. What? So I couldn't be late. There were times where my contracts administrator was like, Audrey, I need you to sign these papers. Simple tasks had to be done, right? So people would get paid. This was a new level of responsibility. And so I think like most leaders fell into this place of like, oh, I need to know what to do. I'm supposed to have the answers. The truth is, real leadership learns how to collaborate and to cultivate community and connections in a way that you come together as a team around a shared vision and we execute. It's not just for the person at the top to get everything done. When you look at the most successful Fortune 500 companies, there are leaders that work with their teams and everybody has a shared mission and a shared vision and people know what they're doing and they execute. Right. And so for me, it was a steep learning curve. And so one thing is like, well, what prevents people from asking? A few different things prevent leaders from asking. One is fear. It's fear of judgment. It's fear that people are going to think you're incompetent or you don't know what you're doing or, you're not really responsible enough to handle the gravity of the weight that's been given to you. That was my fear. Well, if I say I need help, they're going to think I'm incompetent, right? But the truth was there was a learning curve. There was going to be a learning curve. She hired me at 25 years old. I was a new manager and she knew it. And I remember her talking to her one day and I said, you know what? And she would always check in, how's it going? And especially in this had been like early on in the promotion. I was like, there's just so much. Like there's just so much. How do I know that I'm doing it right? And she said to me, she said, bring your questions to supervision. We met every week. And she said, you bring your questions in here. We're going to work through them. And every single week she coached me every single week. And when I tell you every week, we did that for, once I got promoted to the executive team, I sat in that seat for almost 4 years. And so she met with me every single week for nearly 4 years. And I appreciated it so much because she created a safe space for me to say, I'm grateful for this promotion and I don't know what I don't know and I don't know what I need, but I know I need help. And so how easy is it for you to say that you need help? Is it an easier task for you? Sometimes it can feel hard. It can feel like I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. But wisdom and strength is admitting when we need help, admitting where there's gaps in our knowledge, admitting where there's gaps in our skills. And I think admitting when there's gaps in our capacity. You could be brilliant. You could be a brilliant visionary. You can map out systems and processes. But if you don't have the capacity to execute, then wisdom says, okay, I need to assess who on my team, who in the organization can I reach out to for support. Another reason why people don't ask for help is because they're worried about being seen as weak. And really, a strength is knowing when you need help. When we try to go at it alone, it does not work. We end up burning ourselves out. My mom used to always say to me when I was a little girl, and she will still say it from time to time, but I think especially during this time when I was, a new leader and a new executive, she would say to me the same thing she said when I was a kid, you burning a candle out at both ends. And when I was younger, I didn't understand it. And then when I was in this role, I was like, Mama, I don't know what that means. And I was working 60-hour weeks. And now when I tell you 60, I mean 60 faithfully. Please don't ask me how I was doing it. I wasn't married yet. I didn't have children, so it was just me. And somehow I still found time to hang out with my friends and have a social life. But I was ripping and running. And every one day I was like, Mom, what does that mean? She said, think about it. Take a candle. If you burn the wax at both ends, it is going to burn out. And that's what she was trying to explain to me. She was right. She was right. By the time I was maybe going into year 2 as an executive, I ended up in the hospital. And they said this is stress related. And I had migraines and vertigo. I had been passing out at work. I passed out. I passed out at home and just collapsed. And they're like, you're exhausted and this is stress related. And so it's true. You can burn a candle out at both ends. And so for me, I had to realize, okay, this is not working. I got to be able to ask for help. And a part of me being able to ask for help, like I said, I had a team of 7. And the one thing my CEO said to me, she said, you have to identify what people's strengths are so you can assign tasks in that light and also balance out what you don't have going on. So it was important for me to know what my strengths and my weaknesses were. But before that, I had to learn how to trust my people. And my team, I knew a couple of them, but the rest of them I didn't really know personally, right? Like I had worked with them as a colleague, but I was close to a couple of them. And so then it was this part of like, okay, now we got to build trust. Like if I don't trust you, I'm less likely to do something that you're asking me to do, right? I think you have your worker bees who are going to be whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. People are more likely to execute for the person that they feel a connection to, right? Than this kind of top down leadership. And I had to start getting to know my team. So, one thing I knew about my team is for the most part, with the exception of one of them, the majority were brand new managers. So, they had been managing for less than 2 years. And so what I decided to do was to look at our regular meeting as an opportunity for mentorship and coaching. And I don't remember how I got this book. I went through this mentor program. I think it's called like National Association of Social Work Managers. I think that's what it's called. National Association of Social Work Managers. And so they have a built-in free mentorship program. You submit an application, they select you, and then they pair you with somebody in across the United States who's in a similar role but has been doing it longer who can mentor you. And I went through this mentor program with a really great woman for about a year. It was either 9 months to a year. And so she was an executive in New York and had been doing mental health, leadership, and behavioral health for like 20 years by the time I met her. One recommendation she gave me was to read a book called Monday Morning Leadership by David Cottrell. And it was so good. I had this idea of like doing a book club with my management team. And so this book really is about 8 mentoring sessions you can't afford to miss. And so you have this young executive who is now reaching out to this older executive for mentorship. So he's newly promoted and he reaches out and says, hey, I really want mentorship. I need help. My new manager. And the guy says, okay, well, come to my house every Monday. We'll have coffee and I'll mentor you. And so you have these 8 sessions that are outlined in the book where they're talking through different key lessons, right? So one of them, a few, just to mention a couple, they talk about mentorship, right? So the core of this book is this kind of mentor-mentee relationship between these two men, and it highlights the value of experience guidance, right? So the mentor has been doing this for a long time, and I don't know if he was retired at the time, but he had been doing it for so long, and now he's kind of reaching back and helping this young man who's coming up behind him. And so it talks about, things like personal responsibility, right? So a key takeaway is accepting total responsibility for one's own success and one's failures. It talks about practical management, right? So it covers how to manage people, how to manage your time, how to manage being over people, right? In terms of leadership, and how to move beyond kind of what they call management land, this idea of how are you really connecting with people and getting the work done, but not just being a task master, if you will. Really great book. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like a book club, right? And I promise you, they were looking at me like I was crazy. They were like, Audrey, you for real? And I was like, yes, we're going to do this. I'm going to get these books. We're going to do it. And so we fumbled through it. But each week we would read a section. We would come together during our management team meetings and we would take maybe 15, 20 minutes to discuss what we read and then talk about how do we apply it to our day-to-day work. Because again, these were new managers and supervisors and they hadn't done this before. And so I really hadn't done it before either. So we kind of were learning together. Mind you, like I'm an executive. I had only been at the organization for 3 years at this time and had done some program coordination before I got to the agency. So I had a little bit of management experience under my belt. They're coming in at like 1 year of experience or newly promoted as clinicians and now coming into management. So I thought it was a great idea. But what I loved about it is it helped me learn who my team was. It helped me to learn their strengths. It helped me to learn who I could trust with what. And so that was what I think helped us to be successful as we continue to grow. Because the blessing was our organization was growing in leaps and bounds. I had to be confident that my team could take care of it because I could not keep being in the day-to-day operations. That was not my job. My job was to cast the vision for the division, to ensure operations ran smoothly, to ensure we met our performance indicators, and to make sure that we had the best quality services, that we were getting feedback from our clients, that we were running evaluation and research on all these projects. So I had a lot to manage on top of managing the fiscal piece. So I couldn't get into the day-to-day weeds, but I was doing that. And I remember my supervisor saying, you can't do that. You're driving people crazy. You're all in what they're doing. That's not your job. Now it's time for you to shift. And so I needed that mentorship that I got from my supervisory week. And then learning about this Monday morning leadership principles that I got from this book. So now we talk about, okay, I'm starting to build trust with the team. And now it's like, okay, how do you know? Like once you feel like, hey, we have some trust, how do you know people's strengths? I think one thing you have to start with yourself. What are the things that you are naturally good at? Right? There are gifts that God has given all of us that we're naturally good at. Some of you are really good listeners. You may be really great at administration and organizing things, while others may be good at some of the task-oriented day-to-day, hey, tell me to do A, I'm going to execute A, and I'm going to execute A well, right? While others, you give them too many tasks, it can become overwhelming. So how do we figure out, what our gifts are? In the book of Romans in chapter 12, verses 3 through 16, but I'm going to pull out just a couple of specific pieces that I want to read, but I encourage you to go back and read it for yourself because God has given us all gifts. We all have a gift. So I don't want you listening to this and going, I don't know what my gifts are. I don't think I have no gifts. Child, you got gifts. You got all the gifts, right? God has given us each gifts. So I'm in Romans chapter 12, starting at verse 3. And this is Paul. And so he says, for I say, through the grace given to me to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. So we all have faith too. For as we have many members in one body, but all the members do not have the same function. So I'm gonna read, but I'm gonna jump in and interject. So Paul is talking to believers in Jesus in Rome, right? That's who he's talking to. And so he's talking about the body of Christ, meaning all the different people who believe, and saying to them, hey, you all have different gifts. God has given us each a measure of faith, and he's given us each gifts, and the gifts are to help one another. So I'm continuing on at verse 6. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith, or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching, he who exhorts in exhortation, he who gives liberally, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness, and it goes on. So there are a number of gifts that we each have. And so it's important to understand what your unique gifts are. And if you're like, I don't know my God-given gifts, ask God what you're gifted in. Ask him what he's giving you. Like one of the gifts I have the gift of administration, right? I have tried to run away from leadership. I promise you, I have wanted to just hide in the back, be a worker bee, and just be chilling. Like I've done it. And the Lord's like, no, we're not doing that. So I'm going to fast forward you a little bit, right? So I'm in this executive role. I stay for almost 4 years. During that time, I get married and my life shifted quite a bit. And so I really was still it was a lot of pressure. I was still running 60 hours a week. And I just felt like I couldn't keep it up. It just felt like this is too much. And so I downshifted. I literally shifted, and it was a leap of faith. It really was. I had 2 different friends reach out to me about this job opportunity that was happening. And they were like, hey, why don't you check this out? We both used to work here. We think it may be a good opportunity for you. So it was going to be coaching social workers, right? I was like, cool. I've been in social work for 7 years. I could go coach somebody and teach them, how to do the same things that I've done. And so like, let's go. So I go, I get this great job, and I love it. Like I love it there. And so they're like, and this is early on. So that I'm like early on in hire, I'm going through orientation. The people are so kind, and it just had a great feel. Like it was just a really great organization, and they were so welcoming and inviting. And so one of the managers was like, Audrey, we're really thinking, I know we hired you to do coaching, but really thinking, you need to take on this leadership consultant role. And I'm like, what? Okay. So I go from what I thought was going to be coaching social workers to now sitting with the county executive team and supporting them with everything around their professional development training and coaching for the whole county. And I know I was like, Lord, can I just kind of chill? Can I just kind of sit back? And the answer was no. Like consistently, every single job I went to, I ended up in a leadership role. Even if I don't want to be in a leadership role, I ended up in a leadership role. And that is a gift that he's given me. Fighting it or not, that is the gift. And so how do you figure out what your gifts are? So absolutely, you can read Romans chapter 12. Again, that was verses 3 through 16. So in addition to Romans, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting at verse 4, they're talking about the diversity of gifts. These are spiritual gifts that we get from God through the Holy Spirit. And so it outlines what those gifts are too. So there's definitely places where you can read in the Bible about the gifts that God has given. One thing that I loved about the organization I was at when I was doing the coaching was they use the Gallup Strength Finder. And so when I tell you it was so ingrained into the organization, it was down to our strengths were listed in the in our work directory. So you knew, so it would say Audrey, but then it had my top 5 strengths, right? It would say, Susie and Susie's strengths. They would pair us up and with the colleagues based on our strengths. So if you're not familiar with the Strengths Finder, I really encourage you to check it out. I love it because it's very comprehensive and there are a number of assessments that you can take. And so you do this assessment and it pulls out 34 different strengths, right? And for free, you can get your top 5, I believe it is. But then you can pay for a small amount and get the full 34. I would encourage you, if you've never taken a strengths assessment, do the Strengths Finder. It's simple. You can find it online. I'll drop the link in the show notes. But it's great to figure out what your strengths are. Because here's the thing. You need to know what you're good at so you can know how to work with others. The other piece that is very important is not only just knowing your strengths, but know where your weaknesses are. When we know what our weaknesses are, then we can leverage and know how to partner. The one thing that was very clear to me as I was preparing for today's pod and prepping and praying, one thing that I believe God gave me clarity on is this, and it comes out of the book of Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 15. It's that weaknesses are where the little foxes get in. Right? So you can be a very successful leader. You can be a visionary. You can be powerful. But if we don't know where our weaknesses are, then that's where the little cracks begin. That's where the little cracks begin. I love my John Maxwell Leadership Bible, and so I'm going to read this for you. So this is chapter 2, verse 15, which says, "Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes." And so this is what John Maxwell's commentary says is this. It's the little foxes that often ruin an organization. Bad attitudes, lack of encouragement, no time off, impatient supervisors, or gossip. Leaders must listen for the sounds of little fox feet. I love that, little fox feet. Remember, it's better to build a fence at the top of the hill than a hospital at the bottom. So he's saying, catch the little things first. Don't just blow it off. Don't just blow it off. If you have a morale issue in your office, figure out what's going on, right? If you know that you have people who are passionate about doing particular projects, give them the opportunity to serve. I think a part of it is figuring out what folks are good at. But for us, we have to know where our weaknesses are. Right? If you know that you're not good at something, but you find yourself trying to do everything, trying to manage everything, you're not going to be successful. And that's just the truth. It does not work. It just doesn't work. And I've learned this over the years because I've had this, I need to just do everything. And sometimes it can be hard when you feel like you don't have enough support. So I don't want to miss that. Sometimes you can feel like you don't have enough support or you've been asking for help, but they can't hire staff. You've been asking for help, but there's no line item for you. Okay, what can you leverage? I remember, so going back to this executive position, when I was a program manager, I had an assistant and she was just wonderful, loved her. And so when they promoted me, I did not have a direct FTE as a program assistant. And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. Because, this was everything. Now, mind you, this is pre-AI. This is pre-AI. There was no chat GPT. There was no Claude. Pilot did like none of this stuff existed. So we were still doing old school recording the meetings. There was no Zoom yet. We were recording meetings in person and then typing up minutes and then sending those out. So this was a time where it was like, what do you mean I don't have a program assistant? My supervisor was like, look within your division. You have 5 program assistants, right? So I love that strength-based thinking. No. Do you have a direct program assistant that's sitting next to you in your office? No, you don't. But when you look at your entire division, you have 5. Assign and ask those individuals if they can help you. Let them know where you need help and then roll it out. And that's what I did. Like, I remember I was like, well, let me just figure out what I need. Because sometimes when you feel like you don't have help, it feels very overwhelming. It feels very overwhelming. And so some of the things that I needed, I was like, you know what? Let me reach out and let me just ask. And I reached out and I started with, hey, I know you're not my full-time program assistant. I know that's not really your job. You're managing a program, but would you be willing to help me here? And I got very specific with what my ask was. And they said, yes, of course. And so I took on my administrative tasks that I could delegate and I looked to the people who I worked with. I looked at what they were really strong at and then asked for help. And they willingly helped. Do you know the strengths of the people on your team? Do you know who you can ask to do what? And if the answer is no, maybe you want to look at something like the Strengths Finder, some kind of an assessment that you can do within your team to identify where folks are strong. One resource that I really like for the Gallup Strengths Finder is they have a podcast, which is so cool. So they have the Gallup podcast, which identifies opportunities and gaps by strength. They will have like a whole day, like a whole episode rather, where they're saying, okay, hey, if futuristic is your strength, then they walk you through what it looks like. How do you operationalize that strength? How do you take that strength and work with somebody who maybe has relator, for example? How do the two teams work together? So this is a great resource you can use if you've already done the Strength Finder to then find out, hey, once you know people's strengths, how do you work together? And it also shows you where your blind spots are. We need to know where our weaknesses are. We cannot sit in these roles thinking that we have it all together, because that's when the foxes come in, because we have a blind spot, right? So that's my encouragement to you. If you don't know your strengths or the strengths of your colleagues, do an assessment. Ask people what they love to do and create those opportunities for them to do it. It doesn't have to always be about a job description. Like, someone may love data analysis, and that may not be their job description, but you're working on a specific project and you say, hey, Carol, like, I know you really love data. We're trying to assess whether or not we're going to, really build maybe a play place in this particular community. Maybe you're in urban planning, for example. But can you look at the data for what's around here? I know you really enjoy that. Can you identify where there are other parks and greenery areas where it makes sense for us to even build here, right? And Carol may be like geeked about it and get to do that. One, because Carol sees that you recognize her in the office, like you see her skills. And then 2, she gets to do something that she loves and she feels like she's contributing to the larger organization, right? So look for those opportunities where you can pull people in. So yes, you need help, but it's not just about you, it's helping them too. And I think it's also an opportunity let's try not to stifle other people's gifts. Somebody may be in a data analyst position or in an HR position, but they have other skills and gifts. One thing I will say that my previous CEO was really good at, she's really good at this, is identifying people's strengths and then giving them an opportunity to execute outside of the job description. Like, it didn't matter. You'd be like, oh, well, this person does, psychological assessments. Yeah, but they're really good at event planning and they love that. So what are we doing? We're going to have a health fair, and the person who does the psychological assessments is helping with identifying agencies to come and do resource tables at the event, right? Because that's what they love. They love community organizing. They love outreaching. So talk to your people, find out what they really are excited about. And if they don't know, girl, Guy, go Google. You can find, there is an assessment out there for finding what you're passionate about, finding what you're talented at, and then creating those opportunities to partner. So I just encourage you to do that. I think the more and more that we can call people in, the more that it helps the overall mission and the more that it'll help you. You know, when we're not able to ask for help, when we don't feel safe enough to ask for help, or we're just maybe stuck in our own head because we're so worried about what other people think, there's a cost. There's a cost to us not asking. Burnout is a cost. It's real. You can be sitting there exhausted and worn out and wanting to quit your job because you just won't ask for help. And oftentimes there is somebody available. There is a ram in the bush. And so I just encourage you to pray. If you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel safe, pray and ask God, God, send me help. Show me who I can trust in my organization. Who can I trust on my team to get help here? Give me strategy. The Bible says that God will give us witty ideas. Lord, give me the witty ideas for this project. God, give me the witty ideas for this organization. And yes, it's that simple. That's one sentence. A prayer that you could say, God, help me. Because here's the thing, and this is what I didn't recognize when I got into that executive role. You didn't get to that role by yourself. I know our culture talks about we self-made. Ain't nobody walking around here self-made. God has allowed you to be in the position that you're in. And so we need to acknowledge him to also help us to stay there, right? Like we want to be sustainable, right? We don't want to just say, oh, I did that one time. It's like, no, if we want to go from one thing to the next, from glory to glory, from healing to healing, from talent to talent, if we want to increase what we have, we got to acknowledge and call God into our situation and into our lives and let him partner with us to say, you know, son or daughter, you can't do this on your own. And I'm here and I'm available to you. And so I just encourage us not to ignore God, not to act like we did this on our own. It wasn't until I got into like, you know, when I was dealing with the passing out and the migraines that I was like, oh God, help me. Help me. But I don't know that I was asking for help before that. I never asked, Lord, do you want me to be executive at 28? That was my goal. And quiet as kept, the goal was 30. I said, okay, I'm going to get here. So I had a whole vision for my 5-year plan at this new organization. And I said, by 30, I'm going to be an executive. Well, no, I was an executive at 28. And I was like, oh, Lord, this was faster than I thought. But did I ever ask him what his timeline for me was? No. I didn't. I was very much so, especially back then, I was very prideful and very arrogant. But the reality of it was this: to whom much is given, much is required. And I did not understand the requirement of the seat that I asked to sit in. I had no idea the weight that would come with that. And because I didn't have any idea what the weight was, I didn't know how to ask God for help. And I didn't know how to ask the people around me for help. And if I were to do it again, I would do it much differently. I would ask for help. I would assess what strengths I had, what weaknesses I had, properly assess the team I was working with, and then go in with a game plan, right? And pray a whole lot more than I was praying back then. You know, God still redeemed me. Like I made it through that, went on to work at different organizations and to still lead. But I learned now how to lead with him, not absent of him, how to lead with him. So even in the role I'm in now, I'm in another leadership position. And I ask for help. I ask for help now. Hey, I don't know how to do this. What is this? Who's the right person to call for this? Oh, you know, I know we talked about this. Does this exist already? You know, so-and-so is really good at this. Let me call that person. Be very specific about what it is that you need and then how you're going to do it. And this is what I would encourage you to do as you're really talking about, okay, how do I ask for help? Part of it is assess first. Like, don't ask when you're overwhelmed and you feel like you can't breathe. Don't do it then, right? If you find yourself where you're listening to me right now, you're like, Audrey, I am overwhelmed and I can't breathe. I want you to sit down, take a minute, take a few breaths first. Because when we're dysregulated, we can't think. Our executive functioning will not work. So take a few minutes just to sit, to breathe in and out. Do that maybe 4 or 5 times. Then you're going to get a piece of paper and you're going to get a pen. And then I want you to write out where the gaps are, where the issues are. What are the problems you're currently facing? I want you to write those all out. And then I want you to write out a timeline. When does it due? When does it realistically have to be done? Is everything urgent right now and it needs to be done? If that is the case, then prioritize maybe by impact, right? So by the level of impact it's going to have, if it's not addressed now, if they're all due now. If they're not, map it out by when it needs to get done. Ask God to help you have the strategy for execution. God, show me who to partner with, who to delegate to for these pieces. And then you're going to look at your team and the other teams around you and think through who knows how to do what. Who can you ask to help you? Right? And don't do this thing we have. This is a business culture that we have of like, who owes me a favor? Don't do that. Don't do that. Nobody owes you anything. Nobody owes you anything. So don't do that. Because I think in our culture we go, oh well, this person, they owe me. I did this for them. We're not doing anything out of bitterness and spite. We're doing things out of love, right? And out of a natural need for one another. And it is okay to say that you need someone else. It's okay to be vulnerable and recognize that you need someone else. So the posture is, okay, who can assist in this? Who's good in this area? And when you ask, be specific about what you need. Be very clear. You don't need to tell them the how. You don't need the how. You don't know the how. That's why you need them. But you need to be able to tell them what the what is, right? And what you think you may need once they start working on it, it may be something different, and that's okay. And then come up with a timeline. Tell them when you need it by, and then set up regular intervals for check-in. So talk about it. Hey, I need this in 2 weeks. Can we check in maybe once a week? Be as clear as you can with the need up front. So you allow them to tell you what their capacity is and what they can do. Because when we don't communicate, then we have unmet expectations and then we have frustration. And we don't want to do that when we're already frustrated about these tasks that need to get done. Okay, so I'm going to say it again. You're going to write out what the problems are. You're going to pray about that list and ask God for strategy. Then you're going to ask God who to reach out to. You're going to assess who's in your organization, who's on your team or somebody else's. Identify what their strengths are, what they're good at, and then you're going to give your ask. Your ask needs to be specific with a timeline of when you need it done, and then an accountability structure of how are we going to check in and make sure it gets done. And then when it's over, you're going to thank those people. We do not want to get selective amnesia. When people go to bat for us, they step in for us, they help us, and then we forget. Because then it feels like I did all of this for you. And we can't even acknowledge people. So we're going to have genuine gratitude for them. You're going to say thank you. You're going to write a card. You're going to go to the dollar store. Yeah, cards are still important. You're going to go to the dollar store, get you like a pack. They usually have like a pack of like 5 or 6 thank you cards. And you're going to write out, Carol, thank you so much for helping me with that data project. I really appreciate you. And you're going to give a card. And Carol's going to appreciate that you took the time to write out an actual card for her. Just that alone, that's a big deal. And that's bigger than a text. I know it's our culture. I know it's where we are now, but it's bigger than a text. A text is so impersonal. Take the time to get the card and just say thank you. And you don't have to buy people stuff. Now, if you want to say, hey, Carol, I'm going to, get a card, but you also want to get Carol maybe a gift card to Starbucks, $5. Just keep it simple. Don't make it nothing crazy because you got to be able to sustain because you may need Carol in 6 months. And Carol going to have all the gift cards. So make it be something that's sustainable, but acknowledge people, show them gratitude. That also will help you to build relationships. Try not to just go to people when you need something. Just check in on folks. Pop in your head on the cubicle. Pop in your head in their door. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Stop and talk to them. How your husband doing? How your kids doing? And you've heard this on my pod before. I'm big on connection and relationships. Build relationships with people. If you think about it, you spend the majority of your time at work. We're at work, 8 to 5? So get to know the people you work with. Make the relationships. Because if I know you, I'm a lot more inclined to help. Right? There's people who I work with right now. If they call me, if it's certain people, what you need, girl, I'm doing it. I don't know if I could do it, but what you need, I got you. Right? I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go find, I made team with a couple other people, but we're going to help you out because it's you. And there's people that really genuinely care about you in your office. And because you ask, they're going to show up because it's you. So continue to be you, continue to be authentic, continue to show up. I really like this example that John Maxwell gives in looking at the book of Nehemiah, chapters 2 through 3. And I'll give you the short version. So Nehemiah is a cupbearer for a king, and which means he holds the king's cup. And, he's really one day he's really sad and sorrowful. And the king says, kind of what's wrong with you? And he basically says, my hometown where my father is buried is in ruins. And so he gets the king's permission to go and rebuild the gates or the walls rather of this town. I think the part that is so big about Nehemiah is he goes to the town, he speaks to the elders, the priests, everyone there in the community, and talk about this need to rebuild the walls of the city that God had given them. And he shares kind of the vision of what God put on his heart. And then Nehemiah pulls all of these people together around this shared vision of rebuilding the walls. And so he has this impression on his heart from God to go and rebuild the walls of the city. So John Maxwell says this about Nehemiah. He says, the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem is not the story of a single successful person. The walls were rebuilt because a leader rallied many people to work together. And that's what you and I do in our roles. We rally people together to work towards a shared vision. Nehemiah asks for help, first from the king and then from the people of Jerusalem. Together, they rebuilt the wall in a remarkable 52 days. Nehemiah reminds us that leaders always enlist the help of others to accomplish a vision. It is okay to ask for help. In order to accomplish it, we can't go it on our own. Remember, we're all part of one body. And so our gifts help the body. They help everybody. So when you bring your gifts to the table and your coworker brings their gifts to the table, you all are working toward a shared vision, which ultimately benefits your organization and you as an individual. He says, use these prompts to remind you when it's time to ask for help. So I love this. So when do we ask for help? Here we go. When the problem is bigger than you, when the problem becomes personal, when you have shared the problem with God. So one thing it says about Nehemiah is when Nehemiah was sad, the king said, what's wrong with you? You're not sick. What's wrong? And he prays. Nehemiah prays first. And then he says, if it pleases the king, can I go to my hometown and rebuild the walls that are in ruin, right? He prayed first, right? So when you have shared the problem with God, do that first. When you are willing to do your part. So here's the thing. We can't be asking people to be doing stuff, but we're not doing nothing. You got to do your part. Some stuff it is for us to take an actual action, right? So when we've done our part, when you sense God's approval for the vision. So there are some things that we take on that God didn't tell us to take on. And then we find ourselves then kind of struggling to fix it and make it happen. And that's not how he wants us to live. He doesn't want us striving. We're not supposed to be striving, but asking him, what is the vision? And if he has approved it, if God has given it to you, like he did with Nehemiah, it's going to be successful. But it's going to take work. It's not just going to happen. It's not just going to happen because we want it to. It will require work. So once you've sensed that God's approval is for the vision, the other item is when others oppose you. So there's going to be situations where people come up against you and they don't like your idea and they don't agree with what your vision is, right? That's when you ask for help. Where do you have allies within your organization that agree with the vision, agree with kind of the next step for the agency? How do you rally those folks together and help them kind of to lobby around what the vision is? Take the next step, ask for help, and know that you're not by yourself. There are leaders around the world who are in the same position, scared, don't feel like they know what they're doing, or don't feel like they have the full capacity to execute the vision that they have, but they find the courage to step forward. And that's my encouragement to you today. Find the courage and step forward. I would love to hear your feedback, would love to hear how this went for you today, and give me some suggestions on topics that you like to hear. Email me at info@strategicvision.com, info@strategicvision.com. I would love to hear your ideas and just how this podcast is blessing you. Alrighty, until next week, talk to y'all soon. If this episode blessed you today, please share it with a friend. Tag me on social at Audrey T. Shelby. I will see you back here again soon.